Hello, and welcome to a segment I like to call I'm Unboxing It So You Don't Have to. Yes, I've managed to snag myself an Xbox Series S console, one of 4 elusive gaming consoles on the market. I had to sell my soul to a leprechaun to get it, but that's a story for another time. Yes, I mean, between the superconductor shortage and the scalping that's been going on for a couple of years now, you're better off just going with a last-gen console. The Xbox One X or One S will get the job done and will look nice enough. Yes, I mean, let's move into this. It's a tiny box. It's smaller than I thought it would be. I mean, I kind of like that Microsoft is going with a thinner console. It's less waste and less storage. They put all the necessary information on the box that you need, roughly. That's mainly most of it right there. It throws a bunch of fancy words at you, a couple of benchmarks that it can reach, yada yada yada. I'll be explaining those in detail. One thing I like about the box is it's got these little little cellophane pull tabs. So no longer do you have to get a knife, I presume. You can just pull these right off. It's only got 2 of them, surprisingly. Oops, 3, never mind. I'm going to use a knife on the last one, just because I'm ending up tearing the paper that's on the box. Alrighty, let's open her up. So these boxes are pretty nice, to be honest. They kind of went all out. There's a bunch of cardboard that's, monogrammed with Xbox, and you can see the console itself is really nicely wrapped. I mean, it's got this little banding across it. This little cardboard slip with the foam packaging on it. And then we also have just a few more bits and pieces. There's not much in here that I know of. We probably just have the welcome packet, you can put that on your door so they don't disturb you while you're playing games. Tons of cardboard. A lot of cardboard that's all monogrammed Xbox. And then we've got the controller and the cords and the manual. Now, the console itself is legitimately not much wider than the controller itself. It's tiny. It is one of the smallest consoles to recent date that I've seen, but still very powerful, I've heard. So here's the controller itself. It's a nice white controller. It's got these nice textured triggers. It's no different from the controllers that you can buy right now. They kind of switched all over to this particular design. It's got a picture button. It's got, slightly better design. That's pretty much it, really. Not much else. And of course, complimentary batteries. Other than that, we've got our HDMI cable, which is probably just a slightly better updated version from last gen. Not much really surprising there. Now, there's no power brick inside the console. Well, I should say inside the box. It's all an internal power brick. So remember, do not plug it into a power strip. It's got an internal power surge, which means if you power surge, it's going to mess with the console itself. we've got the little manual. Now, surprisingly, it doesn't look like it comes with a code for Game Pass. Now, when I got my One X console, it came with a little trial code of Game Pass. So it's a little surprising that they didn't offer that up this time around. Let's just move this out of here. Here is the console itself. So let's take off its nice little Christmas-esque packaging here. This thing is tiny. Look at it. It's smaller than I thought it would be. It's incredibly small. Now that on top is not a speaker. Despite what, some people believe, that is not a speaker. This is not a plug-and-play console. That is actually a vent. The Xbox Series X and S have these top vents on them. I'm guessing just because it's a more powerful console, it needs more ventilation. Now this console is designed, it can be standing up one of two ways. You can lay it down or you can stand it up like this. Hence why they added the extra vent, because you'll be blocking a vent on the bottom. Now, as you may have guessed, this is a discless console. It has no disk drive in it at all. Hence why the price point's $200 cheaper than the Xbox Series X. It also cannot reach a true 4K. It upscales to 4K instead. So you see, this is a new thing that they've added. Right here. This is the storage expansion slot. They've gone back to memory cards, essentially. So right now, you can buy a proprietary drive on Microsoft's website or Walmart or wherever for about $200 so odd that will expand the memory to 1 terabyte. And let me tell you, you are going to need it. While this is a solid state drive, it is only 512 gigabytes, which means most likely after the operating system download and a few games, you are going to be out of memory. Now here's the problem. With a 512 gigabyte solid state drive, you can't just hook up a hard drive and expect everything to be optimized well with the new games. These games are optimized to run on a solid state drive now, which means the hard drive is just not going to cut it anymore. Now, on to a few things I like about the console. The solid state drive, while it is tiny, a tiny amount of 512 gigabytes, it is solid state. That means it's going to store and load memory faster, which is very nice. That's kind of a big thing that they're doing with this generation, is faster load times. That's a big thing they're pushing for. This console can get up to 120 frames per second on select games, even with the lesser powerful consoles such as the PS5 diskless version and the Series S. Now, it does have, going back to the box, there were a few symbols that you probably saw in there. Most of the symbols can be summed up as, the hard drive, the frames per second, but the more technical ones like the variable refresh rate. Now, a variable refresh rate is how many times a screen can display or update per second. So that means these new consoles can update your screen faster, helping it get up to 120 frames per second. A lot of new TVs are going for that as well. Now, you heard me say that this is not a true 4K console. It is not, sadly. That is why it's much cheaper than the Xbox Series X and the PS5 diskless version. It is 1440p and it upscales to 4K rather than just being set at it. So it'll look a little less, pretty, but it's still gonna look extremely good upscaling to that quality. Now, You saw in there that it has a high dynamic range. For those of you who don't know what a high dynamic range is, it's basically for the colors that go into the screen. High dynamic range allows for colors to be seen as what they essentially are. So a really dark object or a really light object will now just pop on that screen. This console is backwards compatible with all Xbox games. So anything that's put on the store from Gen 1, the original Xbox, all the way up to Gen 4, the Series S, will be playable. Now, with that being said, I have heard, not from my, this is not my own experience, but I have heard from other people that they are having trouble playing Xbox One and Xbox 360 games on the console. It will end up breaking the console temporarily or just freezing the console, and you're gonna have to just reboot your whole system. It's odd to think that this is such a more powerful console. It's the next gen, but it's just having trouble playing less powerful games. Some believe that it is to do with the new quick resume feature that they have. Others believe that it's just an operating system error. So with that being said, should you go for this over the Xbox One X? Yes. It's about $200 cheaper than the One X last gen. If you can find it, go with it. It's more powerful. While the One X does do 4K, true 4K, and this one upscales, this does allow for a higher resolution. The last console does not have as high as a resolution as this one. Let's see. Now, I will say this console has less teraflops, and you might be wondering, what is a teraflop? You've probably heard that a lot. That term's being thrown around with these new consoles all the time. Oh, mine has this many teraflops in it. And it's like, yes, what does that mean exactly? So a teraflop is essentially used for random math problems that the console needs to do. And this console has 4 teraflops, a slightly updated chip than the Xbox One X, and the Xbox One X has 6 teraflops. Now, that may not mean much, but that could mean a lot, to be honest, when you're playing a game. The console could just run slightly slower than the One X, or considering that it's only upscaling to 4K, it doesn't need those extra 2 teraflops. Now, the Xbox Series S and X do have it has what's called a SoC, or a system on chip. Now, that's an interesting thing. That's going to allow for a lot more programmability for game developers. Essentially, all the processing unit is on a chip rather than just a whole different segment. And another thing that's different from the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series S and X is that it's solid state. So while the Xbox One X is a powerhouse, much like this, it's not going to load as fast. Now, that's only going to work with games that are really compatible with the Series S and X. Those games are going to be the ones that probably load much, much faster. Not to say that the other games won't load as fast. They are, basically getting upscaled and beefed up by this console, just like the One X. But the One X is kind of crippled because of the hard drive and not the solid state drive. Solid state drives basically allows for, you know, storing and memory to be saved faster, like I said before. So yeah, I mean, if you can find this console, pick it up. I haven't tested it out myself, as you plainly see. I've just unboxed it. But from what I heard, it's not too far off from the Series X in power. It's way more powerful than the last powerful console, the One X. It's a nice, compact, sleek design. And you're not gonna have problems with ventilation with the new consoles having, you know, either on the top, a giant vent, or, you know, on the side, this giant vent. The only problems I really have with this console is that it's 512 hard drive, or solid state drive, I should say. That's going to fill up super, super fast. You know, it kind of forces you to buy their proprietary drive or a third-party drive just to increase that, you know. And that's gonna, you know, a terabyte's gonna run you probably $100, maybe $200 solid state. So definitely keep your last gen console, your One X, for most of your games, and have this just for your Series SX enhanced games. You know, that's gonna be my best recommendation for you, just so you don't have to go out and spend it, you know, an extra $200, $300 just to be able to play more than 5 games. Yeah, I mean, it's a very nice console. That's all I really have to say overall. It's better than the One X, not as good as the Series X, but overall, fairly good console. With that, I might do a follow-up video explaining the differences via gameplay about the One X and Series S, but most likely not. This might be just a one-off, I don't know, it depends. And with that, thank you for watching.